There's a beautiful teaching analogy out there about whatever is in your cup is what's going to spill out when someone bumps into you. Hi, I'm Chrissy, the emotional intelligence nurse. So, I received something interesting. I received a comment on one of my new videos on my very new YouTube channel here that you're watching. The comment was in reference to a certain video where I am talking about feedback loops. Now, I find this absolutely fascinating, and I'm actually thankful for the comment because it gives me opportunity to elaborate. So, I am a therapist. I was a registered nurse for a number of years prior to going back and completing my master's. And I want to share with you a few things from this comment, which I will also add in here for you. So here's the thing. In therapy, in my work as a therapist, there are there are two access points that I would use as a counselor in a session, therapist, whichever word you prefer. So the first one is our intellectual sort of access or entry point. And those types of therapies I would use for very small example, things like CBT or narrative therapy. They're very intellectual. It's a lot of talk therapy. It's a lot of sort of mental stimulation and mental understanding, looking at mental scaffolding and different ways that we can sort of mentally, intellectually reframe what our thinking is and how we're making meaning of our life, and inadvertently how we are experiencing our meaning making systems. That is very much what we would call a top down approach. We're starting here with our intellectual sort of thoughts and thinking, and there are a ton of counseling modalities that can be housed under that umbrella. It is not better than the other way, which I'm going to get to. It is just one of many ways for a top down approach. The other way is a bottom up approach, and that is very much based on the body, things like somatic therapy, Hakomi, and there are tons more that I'm not going to be able to list in a YouTube short. So those are two approaches. What I was attempting to explain in a short is feedback loops where we think certain thoughts, many of them automatic, oftentimes negative, where we really aren't aware of their origin. Now, our body is a sensory machine. We have like endless nerves and sensory ways that information is coming up to our brain for our brain to process and for our mind to make meaning of. Right? That's happening all the time. A lot of this is unconscious to us, which is why sometimes we just have those automatic thoughts. We don't question them. We just believe them as truth. And we don't really know where their origin was and what was sort of layering up in our day sensory wise for our mind to make meaning of it. There is a lot of instinct in here and a ton more of habit. There is a lot of habitual functioning in our human body that we often aren't aware of. That's just kind of how it is, and that's coming from my current understanding as of today. This can change and evolve over time, as I hope that it would, for myself and for anyone watching. So feedback loops is very much a top down. I'm starting with an intellectual sort of approach and trying to maybe overly simplify, but trying to make something quite large into a small bite-sized piece of information for people to start with, to start being consciously curious about their mind, their body, their meaning-making systems, any mental scaffolding that they have where they find themselves on repeat, whether we're on repeat, stuck in the past and depression or trauma, or we're sort of on repeat and we're ruminating in the future and just trying to make sense of life. Our mind is trying to find certainty in what is so very uncertain. I find as a therapist that a lot of this top-down approach is a really good starting point for a ton of clients. And there's a few reasons for that, and these are my sort of personal, professional reasons. But the reasons that I find top-down approaches really helpful for beginners isn't the right word, but people who are counseling curious and haven't really stepped into that world a ton, is that we have so many ego defenses, all of us, myself included. So it's really important to honor that and to not only honor it, but appease it and create sort of a mental safety to even dip your physical, emotional, spiritual, psychosocial toe in that kind of area of counseling, and self-reflection and contemplative, personal development work. So if someone comes into session and I immediately jump to wanting to do bottom-up approaches, sometimes that really doesn't work because the ego defenses are so strong and so present for very good reason. I'm not going to get very far. I'm also going to be not very helpful for that person, and it's also potentially not going to be very person-centered. Some people are just not ready at that point in time to jump into bottom-up physical sensory processing and integration in a counseling session, and that is okay. Now, maybe on the flip side, some people do need some physical, emotional containment and some regulating and pacing and some co-regulation in session, and then that's where a little bit more bottom-up processing can take place. And that's wonderful and beautiful too. Now, this is going to be longer than a YouTube short, and that's okay. I thought I could condense it, but there's just way too much here. So I want to thank that viewer for whatever they did take from my YouTube short, which again is linked here in the beginning, about feedback loops, thinking a certain thought and having a certain feeling, and that sort of mechanical loop that many of us can get stuck in. Something else that is absolutely fascinating to me that I want to share about this is this demonstrates a few more things that we can all, myself included, take some learning from, some expanded ways of thinking and feeling. Now, there's a certain thought, and we receive that thought from our current capacity. So when I open up my YouTube channel and I see the notification of the comment and I read it, I receive that comment through my current mental, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual, all those things, current capacity, as well as my physical, energetic, human shell. I receive it, and then my mind will perceive what it chooses to perceive. And that's a very philosophical, we could probably spend hours debating and intellectually playing chess over how our minds perceive what they perceive, whether it's human level, soul level, philosophical, I don't know, the list goes on. So it's interesting that communication, for as simple as we make it every day, for as simple as I attempt to make it, if even in this video, there are so many unique things about it. So my video on feedback loops was a certain intention for a certain audience of people who are maybe counseling curious, who are maybe struggling with anxiety, and who are just starting to kind of come into awareness of how their thinking impacts their feeling, and likewise how their feeling is impacting their thinking. You can't separate the two. Because it's like having two ends of a battery, and that's what makes the battery work, right? My thinking impacts feeling, feeling impacts thinking. We just can't separate them out. And for me, I don't, not that I don't care, but I don't care about which came first, because that's not where I'm going to spend my energy trying to discern. They are one of the same. Doesn't matter. What matters and what I'm attempting to get at in that video is the awareness that is above and outside of that feedback loop. So kind of to give you a little bit of a recap, top-down processing is very intellectual, it's very cognitive, it's about our thinking and thinking patterns, our thinking language, our internal sort of narrative. Bottom-up is our physical body up to how we are thinking, and there are tons of different counseling modalities under top-down and bottom-up. All wonderful, all very helpful, and all serve different unique purposes for the clients that therapist is using them with. So that's kind of one piece. The other piece is just on communication. There is what we intend to communicate. That's one thing, and that is ours. And then there is what someone is receiving from our communication. That is not ours. That's not our business. We are not truly able to 100% explicitly know what someone receives from our communication. Even in this video and my explanation, I am not able to control what you receive from what I say. So there's what I intend to say, There's what you receive, and then there is what you perceive from that, how you're making meaning, how you're processing it, how you're integrating it. These are all little pieces on our sort of chain of communication and our human interactions that are all fascinating points of further self-contemplation and reflection. It doesn't mean one person is better or not better than the other person. It is what I'm offering is it is a way to be a little bit more neutral, to not take things as personally and to not internalize things so deeply that we can't see some of the bigger things. Just like that feedback loop, there is what's happening there, and then there is the view that is outside of it. So that is a little bit of a riff on the comment that I received. If you're curious about my response, I can add it in here for you as well. I'm Chrissy, the emotional intelligence nurse, and I love this stuff. I hope that you found some of this inspiring, maybe piqued some curiosity, and hey, if it piqued some irritation or agitation, that is, a more invitation to see what you've received and how you've perceived it. And just how I started this video, it's kind of like whatever is in our cup is what we spill. Catch you on the next one. If you found this helpful, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you around.